would have liked to have died with him. They've been married 63 years. Yep.
Okay, I show that it's 5:30, so Cynthia, if you'll do the roll call, please. I mean, Lee, I'm sorry.
Chairman Donnie Llewellyn,
Here.
Vice Chair T.J. Curtis. Here. Commissioner Rube Render has an excused absence. Member John King.
Here.
Member Lonnie Leslie.
Here.
Member Jamie Martinez.
Here.
Member Stephen Verdau.
Here.
Okay, we have a quorum, so this meeting of October the 6th is called to order. I don't see any, we have one visitor in the back. Welcome. First is the approval of minutes from September the 1st meeting. So we're looking for approval on those minutes. Do we have a motion?
Motion approved.
We have a motion to approve. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a second. Those in favor of approving the minutes as written, say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Those opposed, say aye. Minutes are approved as written. Okay, under old business, we have TSA construction and federalization update. Mr. Baker.
Last week, we received our letter of federalization. So we are, at this point, able to move on with our terminal construction. Right now, it is in the bond phase, did you say?
We're working on the contracts and getting all the upfront documents through in purchase orders. With CES, the actual contract is being awarded to Nick Griego and Sons. We're just doing it through a purchasing agent, so that way we could accelerate this process. But yes, the plan is for them to get started here with construction here fairly quickly. The construction is supposed to scheduled to last probably until about March time period. In the federalization letter that we received, TSA is planning to start the screening process the beginning of June. So between March and June, that'll give them time to bring in their equipment, hire employees, and do training.
Okay. Is that going to be quite an update? I haven't seen the plan, so is it a major reconstruction?
What we're planning to do is, so there will be some office spaces built just to the, let's see what direction we want to call north out there, to the where the rest or to the concession area is. That's where office space. They have to have 2 office spaces for TSA, and then we will build a glass wall that is parallel to the departure doors currently. Those departure doors will be turned into arrival doors. So once you go through TSA screening, you'll go to the kind of where the sitting area is now to wait, and you'll have an exit door that will construct in that area. The conference room will become the baggage claim area, and so when you deplane, you'll come in through the arrival doors, and then the air carrier will bring the baggage through that back door into where the conference room is, and that's where you'll be able to go claim your baggage. It is the first phase of a proposed 2-phase project. If we continue to expand and our enplanements go up, we'd eventually expand to where the seating area would become larger for more passengers, as well as we had changed the entrance to the facility itself. So I'm certainly happy to. I will email out each one of you members what the proposed layout does look like at the terminal, though.
But it's still in the same footprint. We're not expanding the building.
Not at this point.
Not at this time.
Not at this time. Phase 2, if we ever get there, we would expand the building itself.
Okay. Thank you.
Planning on putting a portable out there of some sort?
There will be an additional portable placed off to the side, kind of where the where Denver Air stores a lot of their equipment now. We'll put a portable building out there for training space for TSA as well. That's a requirement.
Okay, any questions, comments? Okay, we'll move on to taxiway update. Lee?
Okay, we did have our bid opening, and it was granted, and they're still working on the same stuff with bonds and contracts and stuff with the taxiway. So whenever they get all that together, we'll know more about when we're gonna be able to start that project.
But we don't know when that's gonna be yet.
Not quite yet.
Okay.
And that was awarded to K Barnett. They were the low bidder for that project. We will be awarding all of them, all of the bid alternates except for one, in which our Public Works Department will go out and remove some of taxiway A there at the end where it used to circle back around to the blast area. And so our Public Works Department actually is going to do that, which will reduce the cost of the project itself and bring it back into within the funds that are available through their state funding grant agreement.
But we still have access to runway 26 through that area, the sod runway.
Correct.
Correct. It's not going to, but that taxiway we had to eliminate. The FAA would not pay to revamp that.
Right, you're eliminating the asphalt,
Correct.
but you're leaving it sod so that we still have access to runway 26.
Correct.
Okay. Okay. One quick question, I guess they're gonna go back with asphalt, not concrete on this taxiway? Is
I
that what
believe
they're
that's
doing?
it.
Okay.
Yep.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, airline update, Lee?
Denver Air Connection, they had 447 scheduled flights for September. And they flew 447, and a total seat filled was 437. So they averaged less than one person per flight.
Wow. Are they
Had
complaining? Are they complaining yet?
I haven't heard anything from them about that. I talked to one of their representatives this morning, and she said that they've had a few 15 and 16 enplanements here and there, so they're happy with it, and they just hope to see it grow. But any complaints, I haven't heard any.
Is the Air Force still not flying?
No, they're not out of our airport. No, they're
Yeah.
not. I think they're still on a,
I know they had shut down for
Kind of
COVID, I
shut
guess,
down.
for this COVID thing, and
Yeah, I'm not sure if the Air Force is actually using any commercial air service. If they're going places, I think that they're flying internally to themselves. I have had conversations with Mr. Cliff Honeycutt, the president for Denver Air, and what their focus is right now is, and what we are working on is to change the classification of our runway from a B2 classification to a C2 classification, which will allow them to bring in their ERJ 145. We're also working on some ACM updates that will be a part of that requirement. So as soon as we get to those in place and the FAA signs off on our ALP as well as our ACM, then they'll be able to bring in their ERJ, which is their 50-seat regional jet. They claim that it's more efficient for them to run, but it would be an exciting time for us to have a regional jet sitting out there. It's something that we've been working on for a really long time for our airport. So that's exciting that they're looking to move forward to that.
What are they doing to promote their service to the community, and how are we gonna work on getting those enplanements up? I can't imagine a 55 passenger jet coming in here for less than one passenger a trip.
Well, they say it's more efficient for them to fly that.
Sure.
And so whether it has one passenger on there or 50 passengers on there, versus the Dornier, it's still more efficient for them to fly that. It is something that, actually I was in a meeting today with the Chamber of Commerce, and we were talking about ways to promote that air service. Because over Labor Day weekend, they did actually really well. And that's that time that they had, about 16 passengers traveling to and from Denver. So those are the numbers that we obviously want to keep going and keep going. But yeah, it's definitely a conversation we want to have with them to promote their air service.
Are they still thinking when we get the TSA and the update, are they considering DFW at all yet?
No, I don't think they're ever going
You
to
don't think
consider.
they will ever do that?
No, absolutely not. They don't have rights at DFW.
I thought they were in negotiations with American or somebody on code sharing at one time. Is that not true?
Not that I'm aware of. I know that the previous air carrier that we were working with was working to code share with American, I believe.
Okay. Okay. Any other questions, comments? Fuel sales update, Lee?
100 low lead for August, we did 4,628 gallons. September, we did 2,925 gallons. So we had a pretty significant drop off on our 100 low lead sales. And jet stayed pretty stagnant. We had 6,434 in August. In September, we had 6,471. So, like I say, pretty stagnant. The end of this month, first of next month, I've got 2 different companies, or one is their support for the air base. They do air support for ground force training. It's kind of like what Blue Air. This is a different company doing the same thing, and they'll be in here for about the last week of this month and first week of next month, and he's projecting about 200 gallons a day for that. I think it's the first week in November or the second week in November. I've got, what was it, 8 UH-60s coming in, and they're going to take about 2,500 gallons. And then 24 hours later, I got 11 of them coming in, and they're going to take about 3,000 gallons. So hopefully all those pan out, and it'll make everything look a little bit better for our jet sales.
Are we doing any advertising? Are we getting a hold of the fractional people and people like that, trying to entice them here?
Not that I'm aware of as far as advertising. I haven't done any advertising.
And I do believe our transient numbers we are starting to see go up, correct? I mean, from August to September, while the fuel sales have been the same, they've definitely come up since March and April and May.
Yes, they have come up in the last
So,
couple of months compared to
those
what
numbers
they were.
are starting to climb. I mean, obviously with the pandemic, it's definitely slowed things down, and doesn't give us a good true tell of what our potential fuel sales could be.
Yeah, I think your locals fixing to start picking up, and
Yeah.
I know nationwide things are starting to move.
Yeah.
I've got a question on courtesy cars. Do we have any courtesy cars available for military aircraft coming in, onesies or twosies, that they could use the car to go into town, that sort of thing?
We do have one courtesy car available. It's got a 2-hour time limit on it, and they come in, they sign it out.
Okay. That's sometimes an enticement to, when they're out on training flights. Someplace that will allow them a training, or a courtesy vehicle, just to go in and get lunch. They fly back to wherever they're out of.
Right.
That helps.
Yeah, we do have one. It's basically a first come, first served basis. And that's pretty much where we're at on that.
Sure. Okay.
Do you ever need another one? Do you ever have a need for another courtesy car?
Very
Additional one?
seldom do we have somebody come in and ask for one when it's already out. We have had a few here and there, but it's not a everyday deal, you know. It's like our courtesy car now, I think we've probably loaned it out more in the last month than we have in the last 3. So it's kind of hit and miss with it.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chair, back on fuel sales.
Okay?
I just kind of have a question or a comment, I guess. I would prefer, I think, if we could establish a baseline. You know, fuel sales are the primary income for the airport, correct? There's other income, but that's the primary income for the airport. Would it be possible to create a baseline so that when we hear the numbers, our numbers are up, our numbers are down, I don't know what that means. You know, maybe last month we had our numbers were down, this month we increased by so many gallons, but I don't know what that means to the airport. So if we could create a baseline of this is, you know, based on the cost of fuel, this is what we need to sell to break even, to be in the green, to, you know, whatever that is, establish that baseline, and then, you know, and then that'll give some meaning to, I guess, you know, if our numbers are up or down, that's going to give, I think, the members a little bit more understanding of where we are in generating sales off fuel.
Thank you. And Mr. Chairman, Member King, that is something that actually we're going to be working on with all of our departments, because even as I read reports and they tell me what's happening this month, you're absolutely correct. That means nothing to me unless I go back and start pulling past reports. And so I figure we can create simple spreadsheet or something, or table that has, you know, what was this month compared to last year? What was this month compared to the previous month, et cetera? And so that way you can have a comparison to say, hey, we're doing better in our fuel sales, we're doing worse in our fuel sales. When it comes to sales and whether or not where we are from projecting to be even or under, that's something that we can take a look at. But it's the fuel sales alone do not cover our costs, and so we do subsidize the airport to some. Obviously trying to reduce that though, but we'll definitely work on that for future reports. I 100% agree.
Thank you.
I don't think prior to September would be a good
It's-
timeline.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sometime in the future.
Is the other income rentals?
Leases.
Yeah,
So,
leases,
yeah,
yeah.
hangar rentals, leases to ground leases. That's basically it.
Okay.
Okay, any other comments or questions on fuel sales? Okay, we'll move into new business, request for action, fuel billing accounts at the airport. Lee?
Okay, I sent everybody out a letter and an email. Right now with our fuel, give me just a second.
So, Mr. Chairman, right now we've been basically acting as a bank for our local pilots. And so they can come in and basically charge fuel to us, and then we send them invoices, and sometimes they pay, sometimes they do not pay. And this is an issue that we've actually run into in other departments within the city, and we used to have the same similar situation out at our landfill where we established credit essentially to the users of the landfill, similar to the users of the airport itself. And so when we take a look at this and we start looking at past due accounts, it makes us question, why are we in the credit business when we can, we can keep AvFuel, there's AvFuel cards that people can be billing to, or we even have the ability, similar to what we do out at the landfill, is keep a credit card on file for those people. They put it on file with our finance department. The employees on their end actually do not have access to any of that information. And so there's not the possibility for those employees to be able to steal that person's information and go out and use their card. It's something that I felt would, in working and talking with Lee, that would make sense for our airport. Once again, why are we the ones in the credit industry when we can set up a process and still be able to have our pilots be able to charge their fuel? It's just not hitting to us right away. It's hitting to a third party to where we're not the ones actually out the funds. It would be that third party that the owner is responsible to. And so we actually generated a letter, had a conversation with our city attorney who helped to put this letter together that's been provided to you, and wanted to bring it to the board for any feedback and thoughts that you may have.
Is this what you want to implement airport-wide on everybody on the airport?
For fuel sales?
Yeah.
Yes.
So what do you do with your commercial operators at the plant? I mean, you've got, waste management companies that use your facility. Are you charging them with a credit card every time they come in
At the landfill?
at the landfill?
Yes, absolutely. It's worked well. We've been doing it for, gosh, close to 10 years now. And we obviously don't have any outstanding debt to the city of Clovis at this point in time because they charge it to their credit card companies.
So it would be the same process, only instead of charging for weight, you charge for fuel. But the process would be the same.
Absolutely. So, for example, if you have an aircraft and you call us to come fuel up your plane, we can still fill up your plane, but instead of us sending you a bill later, we just charge the credit card that's on file with us, or if you have an AvFuel card, AvFuel gets charged.
So how are you going to handle it whenever the airport, when the credit card doesn't go through?
I mean, that's a similar situation to what we would have now. I mean, we would have to send, obviously, an invoice to the employee or to the person that received the fuel. I do not know if we've had that issue out at the landfill. They have to keep a current credit card on file. We do have instances of several pilots that have not paid and have several fuelings to where they owe us fuel.
Is it mostly private pilots, or is it a mixture of private, commercial, or?
No,
I
it's
mean,
a-
I would imagine a
it's-
business,
There's,
It's a combination of both.
yeah, it's
yeah.
a combination. There's some locals, some that have come in and got their planes fueled and got in their plane and left. So those, we try to track them down by tail number and send them an invoice. Now with the credit card, if I may, we can put it on file through the AvFuel system as well. And we would take care of it through AvFuel. And we do that with, TJ, I believe you've got a card on file. Mr. Llewellyn, you've got a card on file. And we can put cards on file, regular credit cards. And then as they come in, get their fuel, as y'all well know, we'll just send you a receipt. We'll email you a receipt. Whenever we put those cards on file, we try to get as much information as we can, especially phone numbers and email address. And if I have one that comes up and it declines, then I call the customer at that point and let them know that their card declined. And 9 times out of 10, they'll tell me that, yeah, I forgot, it got stolen or whatever, and I had to replace it. Here's the new card, and I'll go ahead and enter their new card into the system. And like I said in the letter, I can do that over the phone or I can do it in person. No difference to me one way or the other. It's whatever the person feels comfortable with. If they don't want to do it over the phone, they want to come in the office and do it, that's perfectly all right. It takes about 15, 20 minutes. And that's pretty much it. Just fill out all the information and it's on file. I wasn't aware that the city had something in
We use a
place like
vendor.
that.
I mean, we use a vendor.
So that's certainly another option that, like I say, I wasn't aware of, that the pilots, mainly local pilots, I guess, could do something like that.
We also have the ability, and Paul Nelson is here this evening, he's our IT director, to to where we potentially could run like a square on our iPad or something, and if they wanted to pay us out there on the fueling, we could do that there too as well. Is that correct, Paul?
Yeah, absolutely, we could do it any way we want. Lots of options.
How hard would it be to import the landfill program to the airport? Is it just a easy?
It's not, it's actually a website. We actually maintain, here in IT, we actually maintain those credit cards on file. We have a form that we make people fill out with that, just showing that we're authorized to put that card on file, and it would not be hard at all to use that for the same system.
And so there'd be no cost really
Yeah,
to speak of?
No, and there's no cost, I mean, and we'll compare the two systems between Avfuel's card on file versus our card on file. And if there's no cost and it's easier to use Avfuel, we'll certainly review that option.
at the landfill, they're issued a card that has their account number on it, which is only a 4-digit number that we make up. So that way they wouldn't be able to see the full credit card number, and they must present that card every time at the landfill. They can't just know the number, they actually must present the card.
In some commercial aircraft, flying in and refueling would be an Avfuel, they would use an Avfuel card, is that?
Commercial
how I
pilots,
understand it?
I mean, typically they pay with a credit card, I'm not sure.
Some of the companies have Av cards, which is,
It's a third
there's
party.
all different kinds of air cards.
Yeah.
But our distributor is Avfuel company, and they have what they call an Av card. And they have those on file. The pilot actually has the hard card, and then it's actually also in the system already. So we can just run their tail number. We don't even need their card if they have an Avfuel card. I did check with Avfuel. You asked me about rates and fees. I did check with Avfuel, and they said that with the contract that they drew up with the city, there are no added extra
No convenience fees or.
convenience
additional
fees or anything
processing
like
fees.
that. The city took that in part of the contract. So when the pilot puts a credit card on file, you're not charged a convenience fee every time you fuel your plane and use that card on file.
I think it's a step in the right direction. If we could import the same type of software that we're using out of the landfill, have it used on the computers over at the airport, so that they're able to pay the same way.
Well, I think overall, it's a good idea.
I don't
But
see any downside.
I see some downsides, and it has to do with commercial operators. You know,
Oh,
when you're filling 5 airplanes 2 or 3 times a day, and you're running 200, 300, 400 gallons a day, you know, during the heat of the summer, that can be a problem. Because we've seen, you know, mistakes happen. So there's one particular company that does not like this at all, okay? Because of that same issue. So what I'm trying to allude to you is, and Justin, you've heard me say this time and time again, the city bought into the FBO as a commercial operation. Okay, are you not negotiable on terms and conditions on how you operate the business? Is this gonna be a cut and dried where everybody has to follow this?
Absolutely.
Or are you gonna be in the open to negotiations?
No, I think this is a policy for us to no longer be in the credit business. And I'm not sure, with the capabilities in the common use of credit cards nowadays, I'm not sure why the city of Clovis would want to be in the credit business. I
You're
mean,
not in the credit business.
Yes,
Whenever,
Absolutely
if
we
you
are.
negotiate the contract correctly, you're not in the credit business.
I
You're paid
disagree.
every 30 days.
If we're fueling and then billing and people aren't paying their bills, we've basically extended somebody credit because they're not having to pay us right up front for that. And so this makes sure we're guaranteed to get paid when we provide that service, in this particular case, fuel.
If we're going to this fuel system, is there a way to negotiate the price that we buy fuel from the city?
It wouldn't change the price of the fuel. I mean,
Well, if,
It's-
Well,
I mean,
I'll tell you right now, one of the companies on the airport has contracts with 5 different FBOs scattered across the country on a monthly billing. That way, the pilots can fly from here, do their job, and land at airports where there's contracts made, fuel airplane, and you're not running around with 10,000 credit cards with different pilots, okay? And that's what I'm alluding to, is the city says, this is one way that we're going to do business and the only way we're going to do business, or are you able to negotiate with a contract and says, okay, we're going to come in here and we're going to fill 500 gallons a day for 30 days, okay? Can you not work it where you can run a billing process to get paid at the end of the contract or something like that?
well, I guess in this particular case, if they have a credit card on file with us, there is no reason for their pilots to be running around with a credit card. So that card is on file with us. We type it into the AvFuel system, what the tail number, and then it brings up that card and we just bill it. I don't see why a pilot would need, if that card's on file with us.
An
why would
individual
that
pilot
need
is
to-
not going to have a problem with this.
Even from a corporate standpoint, in your particular instance, you said that they fly in, that they're flying for somebody commercial-wise. If that entity has, just like if they had a contract with us, if they just have a credit card on file with us, they're going to be billed the same, but it's going to be through that third party and not through the city of Clovis.
What if,
Mr. Chair, I think, you know, in the instance of a credit card, I think what we're trying to get through right now is, you know, the difference between, you know, the city holding that debt for a period of 30 days or whatever it is. If the pilots utilize the credit card or the AvFuel system, the credit card company extends that same thing, so they have the same term. It's not like they're having to write a check every day for fuel. They're writing credit for that 30, 45 days through AvFuel or through a credit card that's on file. So there wouldn't be any difference. The only difference would be the credit card company would be invoicing them once a month rather than the city of Clovis.
I see what you're alluding to. If I come into town and I'm gonna do a huge demolition project, and I'm gonna have 500,000 tons or whatever figure to put in the landfill, and I go to the city and say, can you give me a break on the rate? Is that possible? Can the city do that?
No, we do not.
So you couldn't do it with fuel then at the airport? If I came to the airport and said, I've got a huge aerial survey project and I'm gonna need 500 gallons a day for a month, can you give me a break on the fuel?
No, we cannot. We have established rates.
Is that by law or just a city's
We
policy?
We
or-
have rates that have been established by the city commission.
Is that what you were thinking?
That's exactly what I'm alluding to.
if I
Well,
may,
that's, I mean, back when we talked about the rates and when we changed the rates for the local pilot option, that all went back to the city commission for approval.
But if the city commission agreed, it would be legal then? I mean, there's no federal laws or anything
No.
that says we can't give someone a break, a customer who,
Yeah, but that's not gonna, that'd have to go up for a city commission request every time. And so that's just not an efficient way of doing business.
oh, I see.
I mean, I mean, to establish rates for individual pilots we could be negotiating with every pilot that comes through our area.
Well, and that's why I was coming back to the question about the AvFuel service, because I look here on ForeFlight and we're the highest priced fuel around. I mean, by far, we're 4 1/4, and there's not another 4 on the map until you get to, Tucumcari is, but everybody else is under 350, 259, in Plainview, and so we're not even close to competitive. And so if.
Could we adjust that? Have you adjusted that?
And so that's
I'll look
part of
at
the
it.
question is we gotta, how do we get competitive so that we can encourage business and you know, people to come here and do business with
Yeah,
the
so
city.
we have a set markup on the rates, and so we just take the av fuel price and mark it up whatever that set markup is. But I believe we're supposed to update that system whenever
Well,
we,
the last time we got a load of fuel in, I updated it to meet with the markup that we're supposed to add to it. I updated it to meet that. So it's been updated in the av fuel system for that, in-place markup. And as far as, I don't know why our fuel costs more or costs so much to get. I don't know. I don't know if it's shipping because of where we're at. I really don't know. I just went off of the invoice that they sent me and put in our standard markup.
I just know that we're not competitive, and that what I'm kind of getting from the city's perspective is that we don't really care if you come here for business. It's a take it or leave it system. And so, which is kind of offensive from a business perspective when you want to come in and you want to negotiate like you would in the business world, and the city just says, take it or leave it. And that's an offensive stance to a business mindset when we're trying to come in and do good things.
oh, absolutely, and I don't disagree. I mean, we looked at the rates. I mean, we created a local pilot option. We looked at, we changed, I believe, our markup. And so I would say that it is something that the city of Clovis does consider and has considered and adjusted to. Do we have the flexibility to change the rates at OM because Lee decides to give a customer one deal and give this other customer another deal? Absolutely not. From an employee standpoint, I wouldn't want to put my employee in that position, because then I'm going to have you coming to me saying, well, you gave this guy this rate and he's giving me this rate. And so I would never put an employee in that position of having to make those deals and those negotiations on his
And I
own.
understand that, but the bottom line is, on fuel price, we're not competitive. And so, you know, we can say all the things that we want to, we've got a multiplier, we give discounts, but if I'm a pilot sitting up in the air and I'm looking at ForeFlight, I'm certainly not gonna land in Clovis, New Mexico to buy fuel.
But-
And so, you know, we have to look at it, you have to take and look at it from a different perspective as well, and then how do we marry those two together so that as a city, we're competitive and we have an open for business sign as opposed to a, nah, just go somewhere else.
And I don't want people to have that opinion of, yeah, let's just go someplace else. And if we can figure out ways to make it work, I'm open to listening to it.
Is it possible to price fuel on a sliding scale? It's just a set,
We adjust based off bulk fuel sales. And so the more fuel you buy from us at a particular time, if you buy, I can't remember what the markups are, but between 0 and 100 gallons, it's X amount of markup. Between 101 gallons and 200 gallons, it's X amount of markup.
well, we already have that.
So we do have a bulk fuel option, absolutely.
That's on jet fuel only.
Correct.
So we do not have that, and what TJ's looking at is 100 OLED prices around, that's what he's,
Since September, or since January through August, one of your operators bought 7,000 gallons from this airport. That was the highest price fuel that company paid nationwide. Nationwide, and there was airplanes all the way into Iowa, California, South Texas, Mississippi, Louisiana. This was the highest price fuel nationwide. They negotiated with FBOs where they were operating and said, we're going to be in there, we're going to be flying 200 hours, we're going to be burning so much fuel. What can you do with price? And not a one of them did not give them a decent discount. That's what I'm talking about Clovis becoming business savvy in general aviation. Because this is not a business where you say, okay, we're going to charge $5 a gallon to everybody that comes through this airport as a transit, and that's the end of the discussion, because people will not talk that way. If you will not negotiate on bulk sales, they won't come in here, jets included. If they come in and say, I need 300 or 400 gallons, and you won't give them a decent discount, something to incentive, they will not come in here. And that is pure and simple business philosophy. And that's what that's what TJ and I are trying to get across to you guys.
And I 100% understand what you're saying, but I also 100% understand the side of the municipality and the state statutes that we have to live within.
Well, and Justin, you and I have talked about this before. The city took this on as a business. They bought out an existing business and they become the sole provider of the fuel. That means nobody can compete with the city. And so that took all the business out of it. And, you know, there's airplanes that have come in here that they couldn't get ice, they couldn't get coffee, they couldn't get a courtesy car. And this, guys, is high dollar people. These are the people that we need to be contending to. We've got to take care of those jets. If we don't, they'll do exactly what they're doing. They're flying right over. We're not advertising. We're not giving incentives. We're not catering to those people. And so until we do that, our fuel sales will not come up, I promise you.
Well, and I'll continue to visit with the city attorney and see if there is avenues. Like I said, I have no objections to trying to be and make ourselves competitive. But like I said, I've got to live within the statutes.
I understand that. I understand that. But my pet peeve is, did the city not know that when they took over the sole proprietorship of this fuel sales?
I can't speak for the
You
past
can't,
commission.
and I can't, because neither one of us was involved in that. But now we're trying to clean up, in my opinion, is a mess. And so we've got to do something. We've got to figure out a way.
Well, I guess one question I'd have too, and some research we do, and March to now is a terrible comparator. Terrible comparator.
I agree.
And we all understand that.
I told you.
And so, you know, we created these local fuel pilot options to incentivize our local pilots to purchase fuel from us and not go someplace else to get their fuel.
And I promise you, that is working.
And so I would love to see those numbers as well, to see if that's working. So we can figure out programs like that that are within our capabilities, within the statutes, and what we can do to make it work across the board.
That incentive, I guarantee you, will work. It's, you know, those airplanes are starting to fly again.
And like I said,
Yeah.
now's a bad comparison.
I understand.
I'm comparing apples and oranges right now.
So, I mean, I appreciate from your perspective that the world that you live in and the statutes that you have to abide by are not business friendly. But we've got to take and put all options on the table, even if that means the city's getting out of the fuel business and what that looks like, so that we can have a proactive business mindset out here so that we can grow this airport into what we all want it to be.
Well, and we're working on growing our airport. I believe it's one of the most untapped assets that we have in the city of Clovis. I mean, we're actually have a meeting this upcoming week with the state to potential fund a brand-new fuel farm at over $1 million. So that's a huge benefit to the city of Clovis running the FBO, because we have access to those state dollars over somebody else and having to, and that's one of the reasons the city, from my understanding, ended up with the FBO, is because the fuel farm itself wasn't being maintained and was about to get shut down by the Petroleum Storage Tank Bureau because it wasn't being maintained to adequate standards. So, I mean,
You
there's,
can have the greatest fuel farm and fuel facility around, and if you're not competitive, it's gonna sit there and rot.
absolutely. And so hopefully, I mean, I think we're like 25,000 gallon tanks, et cetera, to where then maybe when we're purchasing fuel from AvFuel, since we're buying more at a time, maybe we'll get a better price. I mean, believe me, I'm open to looking at things, but there's, like I said, there's the world that we live within as well.
Are we needing to act on this letter, or is this just
it is an action item, and like I said, this is simply us trying to get out of the credit business.
You say it is an action item?
It says request for action.
Okay,
Mr. Chair, I do have a comment on the letter.
okay.
I think the airport's moving in the right direction, first of all. But when I read this letter, you know, listening to you, Mr. Chair, talk about how airlines will receive, you know, something like this, coming from the presenting aspect, you know, the first paragraph of this letter is negative, and my recommendation, frankly, would be to rewrite this letter because, first of all, we're saying, we know you want convenience, but you know what, we're going to cut that off. And starting a letter out to potential customers in a negative tone, I think doesn't set the pace for accomplishing buy-in from pilots and from potential fuel buyers at the airport.
Yeah, certainly, and for your information, this is an item that could be tabled. And so if we want to table it, let us go back, redraft the letter, and for your consideration, that's something that we can certainly do.
I'm going to make a motion that we table it.
I'll second it.
And I'm going to make a recommendation that, don't get me wrong, Jess, I know where you're coming from. I really and truly do. But if we impose this letter and it's saying, okay, and it's a good thing for the city, I don't disagree with that. I mean, I just don't disagree with that. But what this alludes to me is this is the only way that you're going to buy fuel on this airport. And the city is non-negotiable. And I don't like that at all. And if you've got to get the city attorney to see if there's some way that we can get around that where you leave some of the powers to be, if somebody comes in here and says, okay, we've got this that we need to do, but we need a little help on some fuel, whether it be extend a little bit of credit, because, you know, you can fill up a credit card with 5 or 6 airplanes in 2 weeks. I mean, you can max out a credit card with those airplanes when you're flying cross country. And that's the reason that you need the ability to negotiate with airports and FBOs and say, okay, we're going to be here for 30 or 60 days, and we would like to extend the credit for 30 days. We're going to be buying so much fuel, and you'll get paid at the end of the 30 days. That's not extending credit. That's business. That is pure and simple business. And I understand where the city's coming from. But if we impose this as written and there's no negotiation ability, I've got a real heartburn with it.
And like I said, I'll visit with council and see what we can do. I'm not going to make any promises, but if it's something we can do, I mean, like I said, I'm not opposed to it. I'm all about business and trying to bring it into our airport. Believe me, it benefits us. But once again, I have to live within the rules and the cards we've been dealt.
I understand. Okay, so we got a motion to table it. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, we've got a second. All in favor, saying aye to table it. Aye. Okay, it's tabled. Okay, the next is a request for discussion on the gate cards, and this is brought on by myself. And Justin, you and I had a little bit of a conversation about it, and I appreciate you bringing the minutes where these were imposed. And I'm gonna preface this by saying the gate cards are working, in my opinion, 100% the way that this was designed to do. My heartburn is the gate cards were designed to know who was in and on the airport, for one thing, and control access to the airport. When you have solely T-hangers, where you have no control over, somebody can just pick up the airplane and leave and not say a word about their leaving, I totally understand where you lose control of the gate cards. So I completely understand those have an expiration date. What I don't agree with, and believe you me, I have had my honey chewed the last 3 or 4 months from some big money people. One of them's got over $5 million invested on this airport. And she says, if they can't trust me with my $5 million on this airport, why are they making my card expire in 2 years or 4 years? Why can't I have a card that doesn't expire so I don't have to get out here not knowing I can't get to my airplanes? That's come to me from 3 of your big operators on the airport. My contention is, if they have a facility on the airport and they've got monetary value, they're doing a land lease, they own a hangar, why are we making that card expire? Because if they get out here, and we all know, yeah, they call them and they say, okay, we'll come do it, but they forget it, they're in business, and they come out here at 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock in the morning, they can't get to the airplane, I'm the first one they call, okay? So can we do that? And what does everybody else think about that?
From what I was reading in the minutes from 2015, the system is a little bit antiquated. With the way security is today with this type of system, with the way that things are with the systems today, you've got to have some sort of a double authentication. And so if it's a card, it should have a PIN as well. It should not have an expiration date. I agree with you. It should not have an expiration date. We should probably look at having some software that has the ability to turn a gate key on and off at a moment's notice in case somebody reports it lost or stolen. Shut it off. But people that need to go into the airport need to go into the airport at all hours.
Well,
And Mr. Nelson is here, and he was here, and he put in the system, and he was there back in 2015. And so I'll let him give a little bit of history of the technology. And I mean, we've made a lot of strides at our airport. I mean, we've got TSA coming in. So for us to, the importance of securing our airport, I mean, we're headed in a whole nother direction. And so I want to, and I'm not disagreeing. I'm just saying that we need to keep our airport secure.
And real quick on that, my take on that is that security is moving forward, I mean, by the month. And so if we're going to be TSA very shortly, we may not be meeting FAA requirements or even security requirements at all for the country if we were still using that type of system where you could lose a card and somebody could simply steal your card and badge in without the 2 types of authentication.
So, thank you, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners, thank you. The system now, we can turn the cards on and off at notice. I could shut a card off right here, I mean, if we needed to. That's definitely available. As opposed to having to do two-factor, absolutely, we could do that. We chose not to because we took a lot of flack from not only the airport board, but also from the pilots about just having to have an ID card. I would argue this is very similar to your driver's license. Every one of you have a driver's license. By default, they expire every 4 years. The state, you can't drive without that legally. You might do it, but you can't legally do it. So this to me is the same as that. We're asking you to come back. We're asking you to verify that you're still who you are, that you haven't lost your card. Today we'll issue, I don't believe there's a limit on the number of cards we'll issue to one person, is there? 2? We'll issue 2 cards to one person. You know, you don't get 2 driver's licenses. I think we're being overly generous in some of that. And all we want to do is control, from a security perspective, who gets on the airport, specifically driving on the airport.
Okay.
We could easily put a system in where they had to put a PIN number.
Are the expiration dates adjustable as well? Indefinite?
It is adjustable. You don't get an indefinite driver's license for a reason, and I would argue that that's why we shouldn't give an indefinite ID.
Well, you know, the chairman just gave a reason, that people have had long-term relationships with the city at the airport for years and years and years, and they, you know, it's inconvenient sometimes, especially if they've got airplanes there and they're trying to leave at 3 a.m., they forget it, you know. That they should have that convenience of, my card expired yesterday, really? You know, that sort of thing. This should be indefinite.
Well, we're supposed to be, and if we haven't, we send out notice 60 days prior to the expiration. And so there is some responsibility on our tenant's side that they stay in compliance with our regulations. We've given them 60 days to come into the airport, and if they're out there as frequently as they are, stop and get a new one.
That's easy said.
It's,
But if we're trying to get people on this airport to to expand the airport and put money on this airport, why are we gonna say, okay, we trust you with your $5 million, but I don't trust you with this friggin' $2 card. Come back in and see me in 4 years, let me give you another card.
Well, I guess-
That's not what this is all about. I totally understand the security. I completely understand. And I completely understand that we've got to have the T-hangers with expiration, because I know how that works. People go up and leave, and you have no idea when they leave, and you've lost control of that card. But if you've got people on the airport that have put hundreds of thousands of dollars investment on this airport, they don't need to be bothered with 60-day card.
Well, it's a 4-year card. They have 60 days
It
to
doesn't matter whether
replace
4
it.
years, 10 years. It's an expiration that they don't like.
Can we make that expiration date the date that their lease expires? And so if it's a long-term lease, then they get a long-term, and that would be for the actual owner, operator that is on the lease, and not for 42 other people that they designate that need access to their hangar, but for that individual, they would get a card that would have the expiration date of the lease itself.
Correct, because I believe within our gate card policy, the leasee gets a card, and then he's allowed to provide additional card to family members, et cetera. So it's something that, once again, this is something that we can take a look at. But once again, I'd also like to remind the board, these are recommendations to the city commission. The city commission has final approval over all policies in regards to the airport. I don't know whose cards have been given out. It's a way for us to control security at the airport. Yes, they may have a $5 million hangar and aircraft sitting out there, but I don't know if that owner said, oh yeah, here you go, take my card.
Yeah.
Go out there and use it. This allows us the capability to control access onto our facility.
That's my concern. I know of cases, we've seen cases where people have handed their cards to other people, and we've seen other people not necessarily affiliated with the airport or not with permission to necessarily be at the airport going through those gates because somebody gave them their card. So it really is an issue. So having an indefinite card, in my opinion, creates a security risk there with that.
Could the system be set up to utilize a registered pilot's driver's license? Rather than, so instead of issuing a card, the driver's license would be verification and goes with that person. Not too many people are going to loan out their driver's license.
That's a good thought. I have not thought about it. I would have to look and see what kind of readers that we can get that can read, especially multi-state driver's license. Like New Mexico, probably not a problem, but we probably have a lot of people with Texas licenses. My guess is we probably have people with other licenses if we start looking. I don't know the implications. I've never looked into it, so I can't say, but it's definitely, nothing is off the table.
I think that's a great idea with the driver's license.
And we're happy to research the technology.
And I wouldn't be opposed to looking at doing something with a biometric maybe, like fingerprint or something like that. You know, if you went on the airport, you come put your finger on the reader and that would let you in. We've never looked at it, but I would not be opposed to looking at adding that to the system.
Unless somebody wants to lose a finger.
I'm just thinking of all the implications that's gonna cause. I can see a problem with that. Particularly with an outside unit like what we've got, maybe inside, but an outside unit, I could see all kinds of issues there.
And once again, we understand where
Yeah.
you're coming from. We really do. However, on the same side, we're trying to protect our airport who has access.
Believe you me, I was on the board when we had to start to do this, the fencing, and I guarantee you, we caught thunder over that. And I know that the gate cards caused a lot of grief back in the day. We're over that now, okay? But the simple fact, and it's like TJ and I keep saying, you know, we're trying to get the airport user busy friendly. And one of the last hangars that was built on the airport, he procrastinated nearly 6 years. He said, I'm not sure I want to deal with the city on this deal because it's such a headache. It's such a problem to get a $300,000 building. I can go out on my farm and build it in 2 weeks. And it's going to take 6 months to get the process through the city. And he's one of them that complained when his card expired nearly the day his hangar was built. So It's little, and it's little things a lot of times that really cause big issues. Because these people look at those inconveniences and that comes into play when they start making these decisions.
And once again, I understand that, I really do.
Okay.
But in the city's defense, if we're sending out notices 60 days prior to your card expiring, I mean, it's, like Mr. Nelson says, with your driver's license expiring, your vehicle registration expiring, you have to renew that every year, 2 years, depending on your option that you choose. I mean, there's just some inherent responsibilities between being a user of a facility.
Yeah, I understand that, but his comment to me was, really? Really? And that's, I mean, that's what he's thinking. Okay.
I understood, and it's something that I'll have Paul research on if there is other technologies out there that, I mean, we adapted it or approved this back in 2015, it's 2020. I'm sure technology has changed.
Oh, yeah,
So-
yeah. From 2015 till now, it's a big change.
Chairman Lowe,
And those people that
Matt-
make those large investments like that, they look at it as they are a partner and that they are a part owner of that place out there too. And so they take a lot of pride in it as well. And so I understand your point, but at the same token, I could argue that from the other side as well. It says, hey, I made a huge investment here. I'm going to take pride in it. And, I look at it as being a part owner.
Absolutely. And so, like I said, let us take a
So,
look
so
at research.
treat me accordingly.
Yeah. And believe me, I understand their investments.
And believe you me, every one of those operators, security at this airport was #1 issue.
Yeah,
But
sure.
the problem was it's #1 concern, but it's also a detriment to them when it doesn't work right, so.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll take a look at it.
I've lost my paper.
For good of the order.
Okay. Any other comments, questions? Okay. Okay, for the good of the order, I guess our next meeting is scheduled for November 3rd at 5:30 PM. There being nothing else, meeting's adjourned. Thanks, everybody, for coming.